optimize the situation, for example, through the financial side of things and also the parenting matters, which I know is probably your area really of speciality.
Yes, that's true. First thing that I recommend is go and speak to a lawyer. Get a good lawyer. Go and get advice. At that point in time, you don't actually have to make any decisions, but the more you can do with your partner or ex-partner, the cheaper it will be. I think people have an idea that going to a lawyer is scary, which it can be, but number two, that it can be very expensive. But in the long run, you get what you pay for. So going to a lawyer once you've separated is a really important first step. What you do with that information is then up to you.
And I guess for that matter, a lot of people know lawyers. Do you just go and see any lawyer, or is it worth seeking out specialist skills?
Look, what I tell my clients is most lawyers will take a phone call. Give them a call, see if you like the lawyer, have a chat over the phone. Most will give a free initial consultation. Obviously, it generally is quite a long relationship with your lawyer, so make sure that you get on well and have that free chat.
Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show. This week we are looking at a very difficult situation for so many people, and that is divorce and family law. It's an area that's certainly full of myths, and for so many can be one of the biggest financial decisions that they either have to make or is made for them. It doesn't have to be that way. Getting expert help, knowing the facts, and making sure you have a team of experts around you is crucial. As always, please do make sure you take plenty of notes, but most importantly, particularly with this one, if you're in this situation, please do take the right form of action. Hey guys, Andrew Baxter here, and welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show. This week, something a little bit different. I don't have Mitch with me this time around. In fact, we've got a very special guest, which is part of our 25-year anniversary Give Back program. One of the key things about the money and investing space is obviously focusing on the opportunity of creating wealth. The second part of it, unfortunately for so many people, is what happens in the event of a divorce or separation, which can be financially devastating for many people. This is one of those areas there are so many myths, and rather than get to myths, let's cut to the chase, to the actual facts. And to help us with this, we've enlisted the help of family law expert, 16-year, in fact, family law practicing expert, and that is Emma Ludeke. Welcome to the show, Emma.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So divorce, the big thing many people talk about is that it's quite frequent these days. What sort of percentage roughly would you put on marriages ending in divorce these days?
Well, at the moment, it's close to 50%.
Wow, that's pretty sobering. And I guess the million-dollar question so many people ask, particularly in today's world of casual relationships, what's the difference between, say, a divorce and a separation?
So a lot of people get confused about that question. The actual divorce is just a piece of paper that you can file in the court. The actual separation is a date that is communicated between the parties, and then from that date you can start to resolve financial matters and parenting matters.
So effectively the big word is in fact just simply a piece of paper.
For the divorce, yes, but people get quite confused between that and a separation and when they can resolve things.
So you put your application in, and one of the myths, and I guess, it's a really interesting space. I guess it's like the doctor, or I guess in our world in the investing space, so many people rely on Google or a friend of mine's done this for their information, and I've only got to wait 12 months is one of the myths that you often hear about. What exactly does that mean?
So a lot of people think you need to wait 12 months to resolve the financial matters, but that's not true. You can resolve it from when when separation is communicated. And that is just a process of going and speaking to a lawyer, usually is a good idea, and going from there. The hard thing, I think, is that when separation is communicated, normally one party is quite shocked by that, whereas the other party has been thinking about that for quite some time. So then you've got two people who are in very different emotional spaces, trying to resolve financial and maybe parenting as well.
Well, that sounds like it could be really challenging. And I guess if you're the person that's on the just been given the notice side of things, that emotional shock, can be pretty hard to deal with. I guess people are feeling very, very vulnerable in that situation if it's something that's sprung on them, and I guess they can on the back of that be kind of forced or feel that they're being forced into a process or an outcome. How important is it to have a good team around you to make sure that you make decent quality decisions and so on?
I think that's the most important thing, is to have a good team around you at that point in time. A lot of people aren't thinking rationally, so having someone to speak to who can give you facts and can give you advice is a really important thing to do at a point when you feel so emotional.
And in so many ways, I guess it kind of overlaps with our world, where we have people in the investing space that when they're very emotional about money, the decision making's not great. And I guess this will be the same.
Oh, it's exactly the same. And then you're also bringing in another person because you can't make decisions by yourself that arise out of a relationship. So that adds another degree to the issues.
So we've talked about the divorce application is the bit of paper. Mm-hmm. How can you optimize the situation, for example, through the financial side of things and also the parenting matters, which I know is probably your area really of speciality? Yes,
that's true. First thing that I recommend is go and speak to a lawyer. Get a good lawyer. Go and get advice. At that point in time, you don't actually have to make any decisions, but the more you can do with your partner or ex-partner, the cheaper it will be. I think people have an idea that going to a lawyer is scary, which it can be, but number two, that it can be very expensive. But in the long run, you get what you pay for. So going to a lawyer once you've separated is a really important first step. What you do with that information is then up to you.
And I guess for that matter, a lot of people know lawyers. Do you just go and see any lawyer, or is it worth seeking out specialist skills?
Look, what I tell my clients is most lawyers will take a phone call. Give them a call, see if you like the lawyer, have a chat over the phone. Most will give a free initial consultation. Obviously, it generally is quite a long relationship with your lawyer, so make sure that you get on well and have that free chat.
So first step to pick up the phone, would you just talk to one person or is it worth, what do they call it? Is it lawyer shopping or something?
I wouldn't recommend lawyer shopping. I think usually word of mouth is a really nice way. Speak to a friend, get a recommendation, and have that initial phone call and see if you and the lawyer, get on, and then take it from there. But I think lawyer shopping is not the best way to approach it. Some people do that as a tactic, but I don't see any benefit to that, no.
And in terms of the timeline, so the news is sprung on you, or you're about to spring the news. You've got advice, or at least had an initial consult with a lawyer to find out what your rights are. What happens next? How do you file, for example, if you elect that you want to move forward, or do you try and bridge the gap and work it out first?
Well, that's the most cost-effective way. Speak to your partner, have those discussions, but some people can't do that. I think the more amicable it is, the easier that is to resolve, especially when there's children. That's a really important conversation. And then go to your lawyer and say, this is what we're at, this is where we're at. And then there might be just a few things that your lawyer can help you with and the other side, and to nut it out to get to a final agreement.
Money and parenting are two things that are hugely emotional. We see the money side most certainly in our line of business. And I know we were talking off camera before we started. You mentioned that you've been in court previously, and people have been fighting over a toaster. I mean, how does it get to that stage?
Quite easily, actually. I wouldn't recommend it, but it does it can get to that. Just depending on where the parties are at, the lawyers that are involved. But again, that's a scenario where you are not going to get the best financial outcome if we're in court arguing about a toaster.
Yeah, I guess that's the person you stood at the aisle with and said I do, and now it is pretty acrimonious to get to that stage. So moving things forward, you've gone through the process. The divorce gets finalised in terms of a piece of paper is issued, and what's the next step?
The normal process would be you would communicate separation or someone would communicate that separation is happening with you. You would then go and speak to a lawyer, see how much work you and your ex-partner can do together, both in relation to financial matters and parenting. Then the best course of action would be to go back to your lawyer and say, this is where we're at. There's a few issues, but this is the bulk of the agreement, and can you go from there? This is kind of the ideal scenario. And then your partner or ex-partner then hopefully has a lawyer that we can communicate with. If they don't, we can always communicate with them directly. And we go from there, try to resolve any issues. If we can't, then we try mediation. And if that's not available, then you may end up in court, hopefully not. Otherwise, the agreement that is reached can be resolved by a binding financial agreement or by consent orders.
So it sounds, even though it's an emotional minefield, that to a large extent, certainly from your side of the desk, it is a process that you simply have to work through. And I guess trying to traverse that on your own in a highly emotionally charged state is pretty hard.
And you were talking about the best financial outcome, and I think speaking to a lawyer, having your agreement documented properly is going to be the best outcome for you both for the future.
I guess it's for many people, it's going to be one of the biggest financial decisions that they have to make. So the notion of going on, or they didn't, poor decision to start with. So getting a cookie cutter online outcome, highly recommended not to do, and get it done belt and braces properly with professional advice.
Yes, you get what you pay for.
One of the other things, and I've only seen this a couple of times recently, funny enough, within our family, within our financial planning business, is one or other party from a separation. They're not necessarily the people that have been used to looking after the money. Typically there's one person in the relationship that tends to be the more money-orientated person. And then the other side is typically quite naive as to what to do, and then all of a sudden they've got this potentially decent sum of money, but it's got to last a lifetime or provide for children or go forward. What are some of the big pitfalls there, like, for example, estate planning and things like that you see come through?
I think the biggest pitfall that I see is parties continuing to fight about the financial assets from the relationship. I think that's the fastest way to have the asset pool dwindled away. On legal fees, I guess, if you're at that stage. And it shocks me the number of people that come through without a will, for example, especially if they've been given custody of the kids as the primary person looking after the kids, and they've now got money or a house, but they don't have any estate planning or a will. I was also shocked. I recently asked some friends, hoping that they would answer that they have a will. But a lot of them said they didn't. And I said, how do you not have a will? And they said, because when they started the relationship, they were young, they didn't have any assets, and they didn't see a need for it. And then things just happened, and they're now with a house, with kids. And half of them said, I don't want to adult. I don't want to be an adult, even though they are. And I think a will is not a scary thing. It's something you probably don't want to think about, but it's very important to have.
Oh, I guess especially if there are kids.
And on separation, updating your will is very important too.
And I guess a couple of quick fire questions. This is really interesting to listen to, because, touch wood, it's an area I never have to experience. So I don't think I will. And it's fascinating to sort of hear how, as a professional, you go about putting the pin in the balloon and trying to get the emotion under control so that people can become perhaps a little bit more objective. And then with a hand on the shoulder, let them know, look, you're not on your own. This is what we do. Let us walk you through it. In what is some really murky water. Now, I thought I'd challenge you with a couple of quick fire questions, if I may. I did a quick Google. Some myths, or maybe not myths, as far as this area of family law is concerned. So, thoughts on prenups and things of that sort of nature going in. Do they hold up, or is it more of a myth than a fact? Again,
it's a case by case basis. I think a prenup serves a purpose. If you have been married before and you're remarrying and there's two sets of children from two different relationships, Prenups, if they are done correctly with 2 competent lawyers, are a really good tool, but again, need to be updated regularly.
I guess blended families in particular can really muddy the water there, so that's something for people to consider if they're finding themselves going into that.
Yes, again, get advice. That's a really important thing to look at. Sometimes in a first relationship as well, or first marriage.
Second one is I'm okay. I've got a family trust. How does a family court typically deal with a family trust? My assets are all held in trust. You can't get any of them.
Well, that is a big myth, and unfortunately, a trust doesn't usually protect assets in a family law matter. The family court can go into trusts, and again, on a case-by-case basis, it can look at it, and that can form part of the assets for distribution.
Well, and I'd imagine, I guess it's an extension. That question will be the same with superannuation as well.
Yeah, superannuation is usually included, yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Because,
and I guess this highlights more than anything how important it is to talk to someone that deals with the facts rather than, my friend told me this or Google told me that, because, gee, it could be pretty expensive if you didn't get advice. Last one for you, Emma. We've got everything sorted out. We're separated or divorced, and a couple of years later, your ex comes back to you going, hand out, I need some money. Does it all just go away? You've got your divorce finalised and it's done, or what happens in that situation? What are some of the horror stories or myths that people have fallen prey to there?
Well, I've seen a lot of matters where people do come back because the separation wasn't documented properly. There's a lot of de facto relationships now, and they agree between themselves or find a cookie cutter agreement on the internet. And in that scenario, generally there may be a chance that one side will come back and claim assets after the separation, which can be, that time period. Again, if it's finalised properly by a lawyer and you get what you pay for, it's probably one of the better financial decisions you will make, even though it seems initially quite a large sum of money.
Yeah. That is interesting in itself, and that's hit 3 of the things I just Googled today prior to us sitting down, and it's kicked him into touch. And I guess it highlights just how important it is to get professional advice with arguably one of the most significant financial decisions you potentially may ever have to make.
Definitely.
So putting a ribbon around this, one of our goals for our clients is always to provide quality advice, access to a panel of experts that are experts in their field, to help people create their wealth. But one of the things I always talk about is, it's not about what you make, it's what you get to keep. So I guess this whole journey for some people, 50% of marriages, as you've mentioned at the start, can end in, not the outcome you're looking for. And if that situation has occurred, the best thing you can do, I guess, is get great advice on how to extricate yourself from that for a limited amount of pain, or to ensure that you provide for your family, or that your family are provided for in what is a really emotionally charged, difficult, confrontational, very, very vulnerable situation for people.
And the earlier you get that advice, I think the better you can be set up to then resolve the matters, rather than your friends or a Facebook group saying you deserve to have 100% of the asset pool. I think that's a really scary way to start resolving matters with information that is just not true.
And I guess we've just proven that with the 3 of the things I've looked up on Google today that just simply aren't accurate. Yeah. Awesome. Look, I think the next step, if for our listeners, for our viewers, if you are in this situation yourself, if you've a family member that perhaps is in this, or a friend or someone in your group, your ecosystem, your tribe, the best thing you can do is to help them by putting them in front of someone that does this expertly and has significant experience of really doing this. So it's not me for sure. I'm in the money side, not the family law side. But if you wanted to reach out and get in touch with Emma, I think we can use email EJL at Hey Family Law. That's HEY familylaw.com.au. There'll be a link somewhere around this page too, and share this, because I think it's so critically important to not feel vulnerable and on your own. It arguably what for so many people
and
would
not
be...
feel embarrassed. I think a lot of people feel embarrassed. I'm always happy to have a chat. So reach out, get advice early, and usually that will assist the process.
It's really interesting that you use the word embarrassed. I think so many people feel a level of shame.
A lot do.
And I guess on top of the vulnerability of being in a very difficult situation can cloud decision making. And so the quicker you can get expert help and a hand on the shoulder, the more likely a better quality outcome in a tricky situation for you.
As I say, case by case basis, but generally once you've had the good advice or any advice, then you can make better decisions.
Awesome. We'll make sure your email address is somewhere around this, ejl@heyfamilylaw.com.au for those people that want to reach out directly. Emma Ludeke, thank you so much for making your time available for our audience. And for those of you that need help, please do make sure you enlist the expert support of Emma and her team at Hey Family Law. So thanks a million for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
There you have it, guys. Make sure you give us a review and a rating. And again, please make sure you share this podcast with someone you know that may well benefit from having expert advice when it comes to family law. And we'll see you next week.